Hello and welcome to Building Ben's Miata Part 5. If you're unfamiliar with this project, we're building an LS Miata. I have my LS Miata, which has been working really good. Ben had this Miata, went through a lot of decisions, trying to figure out what to do. Finally decided on LS. So there's been some progress since the last episode, the last time you've seen it. Ben's been kind of plugging away at this thing in his spare time. So we got the water pump on, the alternator on, intake manifold on, D-torque injectors in, throttle body. He got his steam port line made to the expansion tank. Still needs to make the lines going down to the water pump, the feed and return in and out of the expansion tank. He did his line routing for his AccuSump. So he's got his line coming from his AccuSump back there, in and out of his remote oil filter, up here to where the oil cooler is going to mount. So he's got all those ran. He's still got to put fittings on them, mount the oil cooler, coil packs on, starter in. So just been working on a bunch of the little stuff here and there, figuring out the time consuming, tedious stuff. So now we're diving back in and going to keep working. So what do we have to do, Ben? You know better than I do, honestly.
I mean, basically the next thing I was going to do is put the headers like fully on, figure out fuel line routing, figure out where I'm going to mount the like Corvette fuel pressure regulator and all that stuff. And then the next
wiring.
Major project is wiring.
Yes, yeah, wiring. I should remember that. So that is kind of the next big thing. Once wiring's done, we can fire it up, which is what we plan to do here in this video. So he's got a stock harness. He's kind of debating on how he wants to do it, whether he wants to run stock harness and modify it, strip out all the stuff he doesn't need, or just build his own harness. I've strayed away from the stock harness stuff, but to me it's a little too complicated for a race car. I'm on the fence about it. He's gonna try it and see how it works, because even though this is a drift car, he wants to keep the functionality of things like the turn signal stocked and the hazard button, and he's gonna have pretty much full interior in it, carpet, dash, kind of like my car, but a little more complete in a sense.
I mean,
I guess basically the same, but just with nothing in the center console there.
The major difference would be my car is going to have power windows and a radio. That would be about the only thing that makes.
And you want to avoid having a switch panel.
Yes, I would prefer to keep the
all stock stuff,
switches basically, right, and then just have like a really clean dash setup.
Yeah, so he wants to, instead of having a switch panel like I do, which the way I wire my car up, I could have gotten away with not having a switch panel, but it is kind of handy. I'm kind of indifferent on that. Switch panels like kind of look ugly sometimes. If you can avoid it, if you can have everything come on automatically and be triggered by inputs, you know, like your fans come on from the ECU and all that stuff, that's really the way to go. So that's essentially what he's going to try to do. And then again, use all the stock stuff for like headlights, turn signals, things like that. So that is the next big project.
Super excited about that.
Yeah, that's going to be,
I don't know if
it's going to be fun.
Heard that I'm about to quit parting out Miatas and just become a full-time painter.
Yeah, Ben has been working on his paint skills. That's kind of what's been delaying the project update. Is he painted it, had some issues, and then painted it again, which came out pretty good. And then basically the makeshift paint booth plastic kind of flew into the paint while it was still very wet. So we ended up with this beautiful texture here. This is a nice.
I had something else I really wanted to tell him too.
Yeah, I feel like there was something else that you've done that I.
Oh, make sure you guys comment and talk about how I'm not wearing any shoes. Don't forget about that.
Well, you're wearing shoes.
Oh, hang on.
Oh, gotta get back in business. Barefoot Ben, that's Ben's new nickname.
Yeah.
He's going to be
a street racer. That's going to be my name.
Barefoot Ben. I like it. All right, so that's kind of the update on where we're at. Like I said, bunch of little stuff. Still more to do, so let's get back to work. No, we didn't pass it down from the top. That's not going to work.
Boom. Just had to get more tilt.
Just need the gasket.
You got the screws, or you need screws?
I need screws.
Here.
Bolts. What the hell is going on here? Got 2 bolts in it. Alrighty, both headers are in with gaskets. We just had that one on mocked up with no gasket. So now both are in with gaskets. Been tightening them down now.
Four to 6 days later.
Sets sensor. It's right on this side. I'll probably have to be the one to get it. All that stuff's pretty tight once you've got the hoses in. So originally Ben was gonna use my stock ECU and conversion harness out of my car, but after I switched to the Holley Terminator setup, I realized how much better it was. And I was like, dude, you should just go Terminator. So he went with the Holley Terminator. So now we're throwing in the wiring harness for that. You started working on his chassis wiring stuff.
I started working on the wiring a little bit, nothing like visual.
I'll show you guys real quick.
Yeah, but that's kind of,
it's just a janky mock-up, but
I basically figured out how to to use, which isn't rocket science, how to use the factory like combination switch to do the wipers, headlights, high beams, turn signals, all that stuff. So I'm just going to use the stock switches to power and relays to power most of the body harness, basically.
Yeah, so he was just basically laid it all out up here coming out of the turn signal stock area just to make sure that what he thought was going to work would work, and just kind of bench tested it, and it all works, so that's good. And he's been tearing apart this other chassis harness, but that's more of a little bit of a long-term thing.
Yeah, I'm basically waiting on...
He's got a relay board coming.
Boards to come, then I can actually like lay everything out. I have it figured out in my head, but
right, you know what you want to do.
Show.
Yeah, and at least that proof of concept.
Yeah,
so
yeah, that made me happy.
Anyway, now we're moving on to the wiring harness. Oh, and you got the alternator on yesterday. So something really important with LS's is these have to ground to the cylinder head. So the easier route is valve cover on the intake manifold. Not good. You need a really good ground for this. That's your ignition system ground. So, you know, if you have a bad ground here, you're going to have problems and you're going to be chasing your tail wondering why your car runs funny randomly, and it's going to be because of this ground. So make sure you bolt it on the back of the cylinder head if you're doing this yourself. Very important, very annoying to get a bolt back there, but it's a must. Oh, Ben also got his steering shaft in, which clears nicely. That was a big problem on my car. Calm and pedals are in. Look at that, dude. Ben's made some progress today. Got the Holley wiring harness right here. Starting to look like a car, Benny boy.
I know, dude.
This is exciting. His fan shroud came in. We'll have to cut that for the fans. I got to get some fans coming from Mishimoto for it. Not bad.
So the AN line stuff coming, so I can finish that.
Just finish your oil lines and coolant lines and stuff.
I'm basically just waiting on like little bull crap.
A little bull crap. Not bad though. I mean, it's getting there one piece at a time. Something else that's important. I'm sorry I'm talking so much. I'll stop after this. If you're building something, it's really easy to convince yourself that you should wait until you have a day's worth of work to do. But in my experience, you're better off just doing any little thing you can. If you have an hour project, putting your alternator on, you should just put it on, because there's a good chance they go to put it on and find out that the bracket you have is wrong and that you need to order a different bolt. And then at least you order that bolt.
Or a different alternator.
Or order a different alternator. An hour a day goes a long way. Moral of the story. So get out there and work on your projects. So Min got his Terminator power wires routed to the back, loosely routed. We've got all the stuff in here. He got a flex fuel alternator harness from Matt Happel at Sloppy Mechanics as well. We both ordered these. So basically they plug into the Holley power, plug into the alternator, and then have a flex fuel plug to plug into your flex fuel sensor. And then all you have to do is butt connector that wire to whatever input wire you want on the Holley coming out of here, and you're done. Easy peasy. So Ben's been working on his wiring and his ECU mounting, so he's going to mount his ECU there, which is roughly where mine's mounted. He's got his fuse up there, relay up here. Are you going to keep the stock relays like right here or something? Somewhere in that general range, right? Yeah, right there.
The next stud over.
Yeah, so that's the stock relay setup for using the ignition switch for the turn signals and lights and all that good stuff. Yeah, it's looking good. Looks nice and clean.
Yeah, there's nothing in there yet, though.
True, that is true.
It's all the Holley stuff that was already pretty, so I couldn't screw it up.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. We'll see where we're at once the chassis wiring is moving along.
Close your eyes, guys.
Several days later.
All right, well, I've been working on the Fummins build, so Ben has just been hammering away at this thing. So he got his ECU mounted here. Looks really nice. He was able to get all 4 rib nuts in. He's about to start on the rest of his wiring, still waiting on that stuff. So he's been working on the engine-based stuff, specifically plumbing. So he got his fuel feed line up here. You can kind of see it right there. So that's ran all the way up and routed. He's got most of his oil lines done.
Basically waiting on a check valve that's going to have to go in the line in to stop the AccuSump from like backfeeding the oil cooler and all that.
Right. So he's waiting on a check valve, but he's got a T and everything. But he's got a lot of the lines made. He mounted his oil cooler. He got his lines made to that. So he's got to paint this obviously where he welded, but he's got it all mounted up nice and center right in front of the radiator there. So he's waiting on some rubber to go here just to kind of isolate the radiator, and to go on the mounts to isolate the radiator. That way the radiator can move a little bit and flex without cracking the welds. Throttle cable bracket done. So he just welded the stock throttle cable bracket to this bracket that was on the LS1 intake, which worked out pretty much perfect.
Yeah.
that done. Oh, and then the lines to the expansion tank. So we can kind of see what the expansion tank looks like all finished up. We got steam port line in and out. Looks nice and fancy.
And we finally got this job.
Yeah, we still got to weld that in. So when I did my expansion tank, basically, for those of you who don't know, I built this tank and I built the one on my car. This is the expansion tank. So this is a pressurized part of the cooling system that raises the fill point so you can bleed the system properly. Anyway, this is pressurized, this is not. This is essentially the overflow. So instead of having an expansion tank and a separate overflow, built them into one unit. So mine, it just like, basically I have a welded bung here and a fitting, and then it just, if it overflows, it just kind of sprays into here, whereas a normal overflow has a tube going down to the bottom so the radiator can suck the water back in. So that's what we're doing on this one.
It was, honestly, it was just really hard.
It was hard to find this,
tube.
but seeing it, like, I easily could have made it a 3/8 MPT bung and then welded a rod.
Yeah.
I mean, super simple. But anyway, I skimped on doing that on mine because I didn't really care, but we figured why not with his. So I'm gonna cut this down, weld it in. So basically the overflow will go into there. It'll be right at the bottom of the tank, and then it can suck the coolant water back into the system if it needs to. So got to work on that as well. Yeah, just a little update on things that have been done since I last showed you guys anything. But we're moving along. At the end of this video, we should be at least trying to start it up.
Yeah, unless something goes wrong, it should be fine. Because once wiring's done, it should fire up.
4 to 6 days later.
Most of Ben's chassis wiring stuff came in. So he's moving on to the chassis wiring.
Slaving away.
He got his own Milwaukee soldering iron. These things are pretty epic.
I shopped for it at Taylor's Toolbox.
So far he's got his...
Pretty much just fans and fuel pump are wired up, but still...
Yeah. So he's got a relay, one relay for each fan, and then a fuel pump relay as well. So he's just working on wiring that, and now he's working on his
lights
and everything else through the combination switch there. You can see the big plug coming off it right there. Goes to there. And then he's got these. So
fun stuff, man. Fun stuff.
I'm proud of you. Ben's been working almost every day out here.
I have.
Isn't that crazy?
I've been out here all the time, dude.
We finally must have said something that kicked him in the butt. Ben's been putting in a lot of work on this thing. He got his new radiator cap on. I'll let you guys know when more progress is made. Just kidding. He got most of his wiring done, so this is all his stuff that's gonna go to his fuse block. Headlights and turn signals, that's all wired up and hooked up there. He's got to run, what, turn signal wires, right?
Turn signal wires and then headlight wires.
Yeah, so not bad though. He's got all that stuff loomed up. He's got everything where it needs to be. He just needs to mount his fuse box on his glove box. But other than that, he's got most of the wiring done. So we're getting real close to the first fire up, boys. Real close. It will happen this video, one way or another. Yeah. If it takes a month, this video is not coming out for a month, and we're gonna get the first startup in this video.
Hopefully this weekend.
2 weeks later.
All right, another update. I've been working on my projects. Ben's been slamming out all the little stuff on this thing. So he got his wiring pretty much completely finished up. He got his interior in, so he got all his carpet in. He got his dash cut, got his dash in. We also got, he got this sick LRB Speed tombstone. And then LRB Speed also made this super cool gauge bezel setup. And they even went so far as to make the mounts for the Holly dash and cut out the top corners like I had to do on my stock one. So I've got one of these as well, which is exciting because I have my digital dash bolted in front of my stock cluster right now and it looks ugly. So I'm real excited to get that in, but those came out super nice. LRB Speed always makes such good stuff. You got that stuff, you got his handbrake in, he's got to finish up his lines for that. He's trying to decide what to do, if he wants to run this line and tee it or come back to where like mine is teed or, you know, yada yada.
Stuff to basically just do it like yours.
Okay.
Put the 52-inch line on this one all the way out and tee out.
Okay. Fuel line ran all the way up. He's got his flex fuel sensor back here going into his fuel line there. This is his fuel filter regulator. It's a Corvette filter regulator setup. It's what I have on the FC. So all he's got to do is just hook up these two lines. Easy peasy. AccuSump is in, plumbed and wired. Got his solenoid here, plumbing going out. He's got all his oil lines done up here, which is super exciting. So he's got his AccuSump line coming up. There's a T to go into the engine essentially, check valve, lines to the oil cooler. He made oil cooler brackets here. He's got to get that painted. He got his lines up to his remote oil filter housing. We got to get an oil filter. So engine-wise, you think intake air temp sensor is it?
IAP and then alternator cable like to the side.
Oh yeah,
Still need
the
to do
alternator
one of
power wire. We've got fans coming from Mishimoto, so we gotta mock those up, cut out the shroud, get the shroud mounted to the radiator. There's the shroud there. So we gotta modify, or cut that up, mount the fans on it, so we can mount the fans to the radiator, so we can mount the radiator back in here, and then hook the oil cooler up, because it's a tight squeeze with this line to try to get past the radiator. So basically we gotta wait until the radiator's in to hook up the oil cooler, and then obviously we can't start the engine until the oil cooler's in. Yeah, okay, the whole reason I have you guys here. Well, one, for the update, obviously. Two, question, we need your advice. So take a gander at the engine bay without the coil pack covers. Let's get a look from this side. And straight on. Okay, you ready? What do you think? So, middle, side, other side. I think I honestly like it better with the covers.
It's just so, like the coil packs and the stock rails are just ugly.
Yeah, like if you had remote mounted coils, nice valve covers and aftermarket rails, but without those, it definitely almost looks better with the covers on it. So anyway, what's your guys' opinion? Leave it in the comments below. Curious to hear what the vote is. All right, so now we're moving on to the fans and fan shroud. Ben decided to go with Mishimoto race fans. I pretty much swear by these things after I ran them on my LS Miata. I have 11-inch ones and the car never gets hot, so now I just put them on everything. These are 10-inch, but the CFM difference is pretty minimal from the 10 to the 11, so he should be good to go. Riv nutted them like I did, just because it's so much better than nut and bolting it, because then you don't have to worry about getting a wrench on the backside. You can take the fans off with the shroud attached to the radiator. He's sealing the fan to the shroud, and then he'll seal the shroud to the radiator. You want to make sure you have a really good seal between your fans, because air is going to take the path of least resistance. So if it can just slip in over here in this gap, it's going to do that before it goes through this dense core. So the better sealed you are, the more air you're going to get through the core, more or less.
Yeah, buddy.
And then have you figured out how to mount it to your...
Just gonna use rivets. That's why I did the fans to come off the shroud easily.
Oh, it's because they're spacing it forward. It's not going up high enough. And your shroud sticks out further now. Let's do this the man way. The way I do it. Take responsibility.
Oh, you're good.
So much easier. All right, after some struggling, we got it. So basically, we're just adding some rubber there to isolate it some so we don't have to worry about the mounts cracking. He sealed his shroud to his radiator with this speed tape, as they call it.
I
so
filmed
good.
the clip.
Oh, did you? Okay.
All right, so I got the shroud with the fans on the radiator, and I got it all sealed up to the radiator with this sick aluminum tape.
Undercoated his front bar with his
Thank God it's covered up. You know
oil
what I mean?
cooler mounts. Yeah, yeah. It doesn't, not the best looking undercoating.
I ran my arm into it a few times.
A few times.
I was trying to put it was stupid.
Yeah, I got impatient.
I was trying to put the radiator in while it was still wet.
At least you got clearance for days.
Yeah, for days.
That front pulley, that's dope. All right, well, I promised you guys we wouldn't end this video without it starting. And while it has taken longer than expected, purely because Ben hasn't really been in a huge rush to start this, because there's not like a huge reason. He knows the motor runs and all that stuff, so he's been...
YouTuber, you know what I mean?
Yeah, true. He's been working on everything else, getting his seat in. He finished up his wiring, got his oil filter relocation done, all his lines done, got his bar painted, his intake on, his radiator hoses, his fans wired, all the things. So now's the time to add oil.
Basically just need clamps and you to weld that bung in.
Yeah.
I can add fluid and stuff.
Yeah.
Hopefully she'll eat today.
Yeah, I mean, as long as there's not something majorly wrong, like the fuel pump's not turning on or something like that, with the Holley Terminator, I would be willing to bet that this thing will start up first try. I have a strong belief.
We'll find out what I forgot.
True. You could have forgot something. You're gonna prime it. That's why the coil packs are unplugged.
Yeah.
Like, well, you forgot your coil packs, bud.
Load a tune on it.
Clearly, yeah, that's easy. Do that with the Wizard. I wouldn't even bother with that until you're ready to start it. But yeah, so oil, prime the system. We're gonna crank it for a while. He has a lot of lines. We got the remote oil filter, the cooler, the AccuSump, so it's gonna need a lot of time to prime. So
the plan is basically leave the AccuSump off and for the first start, and then once we know it runs.
True. Let it fill the AccuSump.
Fill the AccuSump.
Right. Okay, so basically we've just got to fill all of this stuff, which is still a lot of stuff. I mean, if you've ever done an oil change where you couldn't fill your filter, you start the car up and it'll run for 2-3 seconds without pressure, depending on how big the oil filter is, till it fills the oil filter. So you got to fill a bunch of lines and an oil filter and an oil cooler. So it's going to take some cranking. So Ben tried to start it, didn't start because TPS auto set. You have to set it. I did the same thing on mine. I bet you it'll start now. Let's see. Moment of truth. Are you getting fuel pump?
I don't know. When does it kick on?
It should kick on for 4 seconds on ignition. I don't hear it. Called it. Said fuel pump. All right, we hooked up my little dash. Ben didn't get one with his.
Don't be a cheap ass like me.
I told Ben like 6 times to get it.
I knew. Yeah, in my head, I figured there'd be some way to do it between my laptop and the 7-inch dash. But
Yeah.
apparently there is not, or it's above my pay grade.
Yeah, so this is nice because you can do the configuration wizard and you can set, basically it picks a tune for you. So we'll do that too, yeah, just to be safe.
Yeah, because I mean, last time we did it.
All right, fuel pump and she should fire.
Let's see if the fuel pump kicks this time. Yes.
Yep. Yeah, so that was the problem. This is gonna fire right up right now. Ready?
I'm ready. Let's do it right now, right here.
Oh, she's close. It's so weird.
It doesn't make any sense.
We had to check like power to your ignition coils or something. Okay, so we figured out the problem. It dawned on me, Ben was saying the Terminator was shutting off when he tried to start it and he couldn't see oil pressure. And I was like, oh, that's normal. And then I remembered, I'm like, that's not normal because I've checked my oil pressure while cranking before. So anyway, basically what's happening is he's got it all wired through the stock ignition switch. So when he was going to the start position, it was taking power away from the position he had the ignition trigger on to turn everything on. So now we're just jumping the starter so that the ignition switch can stay in its position. We'll figure out how to deal with that later.
Maybe I have to run the Holly map?
Well, take 76.
No, this is first try, guys.
First try, yeah.
First try.
Basically, he was running his normal map sensor instead of the internal map sensor, but you got to change that in the actual tune. So hooked up the internal map sensor to the Terminator, and I think that was the only other thing we've done since then. So let her rip tater chip.
I got
as
one
Clete
more
would
idea
say.
that might make it run actually good.
Okay, go ahead.
Need you on throttle duty, and it likes a lot of it.
Oil pressure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna tell you to watch it.
I think I logged it, but I don't know if I actually did.
Well, if you crank it, I'll leave it running for a second and then you can watch it. Success! Oh, woo! Kind of missed our excitement, but well, we had a lack of excitement because of the struggle bus. But I mean, it starts. It was the start. We should start it again, and you'll look at oil pressure just to be good. I'll keep it running. I just let it off to tell you.
We do know it has oil pressure since it's already started leaking.
Yeah, that's true. It has started leaking, so that's a good sign.
Only time I've been happy to pour oil all over the place.
Hell yeah.
Hell yeah, dude.
Sounds rowdy, open header.
It does sound pretty rowdy.
Sounds like a freaking monster truck.
Now we just gotta figure out what we gotta do, or what I gotta do to make it run like these.
Yeah, they don't have the specific DeechWorks injectors he has, so he has a different one selected. It's kind of close, but I think getting the O2 sensor in will be a big thing because your learn's probably up. So it's probably trying to learn from it being full lean.
True.
So
yeah, it's probably trying to like add a ton of
so basically get the exhaust in and get the O2 sensor hooked up, and I bet that'll solve most of your problems. Sweet. Well, it runs There was a lot of progress this video because it was over like the course of 2 months.
Yeah,
but
sorry guys.
everything from here should move quickly. Doing suspension, which he has most of that. Waiting on the coilovers, body panels. I mean, we should be really close to driving it. The goal would be to get it done by like driving by, you know, next month.
Yeah, goal is basically take it to the 3-day and let her eat.
Okay. Yeah.
That's the
So
goal.
middle of next month is basically his goal to get it done. So I'll try to hold him to it. But for now, that is going to be it for this video. I'll see you guys for the next one. Thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. Goodbye.